When we think of carbs, I'm always telling my clients, always pair a protein with your carbs. Now, we're going to kind of contradict that when we're doing weight training and cardio, because like you talked about, carbs are going to spike up your insulin, and we actually want that to happen during our training session. Whereas we don't want those things to happen when you're at home sitting on the couch and you're just munching on bread or on iPad.
Put quite a visual in my head. Munching on bread.
I don't know why that was the first thing that came to my head.
Love it.
Before we hop into today's episode, we want to say thank you for tuning in and listening to what we have to say. Over the last 3 years since we started this brand, we've set out on our mission to help people through the workouts that we create, through the supplements that we provide, and keeping people feeling confident in their workout apparel.
If you'd like to support our brand, you can go ahead to fitgrindformula.com and check out our supplements and grab a new gym outfit to feel good and confident in.
That's right. So with all that said, we want to say thank you, and let's hop into today's episode.
Welcome back to our podcast. Today's episode is episode 3 of our second season, and this is over our half marathon prep. And today's episode is going to be about nutrition and how to balance a good, healthy nutrition while prepping for our half marathon.
That's right. Yeah, I'm excited about this one. This one can go so many different ways, and we're really going to break down as a runner and more specifically as a hybrid athlete where you're mixing running and lifting. How do you feel your workouts? What type of percentage of macronutrients should you be hitting? And this is a huge game changer that I think a lot of people mess up, that they think of food is good and bad, or eating too much food is bad. But when you're training hard, you need to fuel your body. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do you fuel your body for performance, not just for body composition changes, but performance. How do you give your body enough fuel to get through those grueling workouts that you're hitting so that you can keep making progress? So I'm excited for this one. There's a lot of ways that we can go with this one.
Oh yeah, we could talk for hours about this topic.
Oh yeah.
I know, even over the course of years, we've experimented with this ourselves too. And I think that we have a pretty good balance between figuring out exactly what works for us. So
yeah. So do you want to start off? Let's talk about just macronutrients, percentages, and how to start there. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And then we'll branch off and talk about our training and our nutrition within the workout, around the workout, throughout the day, all that type of stuff. So kick that off.
So if you're not familiar with what macronutrients are, they are protein, fats, and carbs. So that's going to be what makes up your calories and your diet. So we like to strive for 45 to 50% of our calories to be from carbs. And those are whole foods, fruits, vegetables, and starches. And then 20% is going to be from fats. And then the remainder is going to be from protein. We like to aim for about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per body weight. So that typically winds up being about 30% of your caloric intake.
Yeah. And if you have questions or comments on how to figure that out, hit us up on social media or whatever platform you're watching on. You can leave a comment and we'd be happy to help you out. But when you're running and you're lifting, and right now we're in preparation for our half marathon, we're in a 12-week prep where our mileage is going to increase from week to week, you need to fuel your body, and specifically you need to fuel your body with carbs. When your body breaks down carbs, it's going to break down those carbohydrates into glucose. That glucose, especially if you're lifting and you have muscle, is going to be converted and stored in the form of glycogen. That is one of the best things that you can do, is make sure that your muscles are fully stocked up with glycogen. From a body composition standpoint, this is going to help you preserve muscle mass and lean tissue, because when you're doing those harder workouts and those longer runs, if you have glycogen, your body can break that down and use it as an energy source versus using lean muscle mass. So that's a huge benefit. And then 2, just like I said, your body can use that glycogen and it's going to be able to break it down. And our muscles have the ability to store those carbohydrates, especially if you're strength training like you should be and you've built muscle mass. We have the ability to just store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. And that's a huge thing, to where when you're running, it's not just the peri-workout carbs that also matter. Those are super important, but it's your carbohydrate intake throughout the day too that also is important to maximize the muscle glycogen storage. And that's a whole topic that we can dive into, and we'll really dive in specifically. But yeah, 45 to 50% carbohydrates, 30% protein, 20% fat. That's a good blend, especially if you are running or you're training really hard for a specific race, or if your mileage is 10, 15 miles plus a week, plus you're a strength training on top of that.
A lot of the times people are afraid of carbs, and there's this bad stigma that, you know, carbs are bad and there's good carbs and bad carbs. And, you know, people can say the same thing about fat because it's literally the word fat. So they think, oh my God, it's going to make me fat.
Yeah. Carbs make you fat. Yeah.
Yeah. So
which they don't.
No.
Yes.
No. So finding a good balance between the two, depending on what your goals are. Like Jordan was saying, if you're doing super intense workouts, your body needs those carbs.
Yep.
And I do believe that pairing those carbs around your workout is going to be the best option too.
Yes.
So we're not eating low carb throughout the day and working out during that time and then saving up to eat a bunch of carbs at night.
Yes.
You're going to balance that out throughout the day, but mostly putting the carbs around that intense workout before. And then if it's a long run or long workout that's more than 60 minutes, then you'll put in an intra carb source, and then we got the post workout.
Yeah, you first off, carbs are not bad. There's so many different, there's so much bad publicity that goes out around specific macronutrients. Like it used to be the low fat, now it's low carb. Carbs are your body's preferred energy source. Glucose is the only energy source that your brain will use. So you need carbs to survive. It's just plain and simple. But if you're trying to perform and you're trying to go out and run miles and lift and make a lot of progress, you have to have carbohydrates in your diet. And like Alyssa was talking, and we'll dive specifically into what we do. I just recorded a full day of eating. I know you have full day of eating videos on your YouTube channel. So if you're interested in seeing that on the visual aspect, definitely go check those out on Jordan Schaefer Fitness on my YouTube. Go check it out on Alyssa Mueller Fitness on her YouTube. But you need those carbs around your workout. So don't be afraid of eating carbohydrates. I promise you, if you're training your ass off, your body will use them. So drop that stigma. As far as you mentioned carbs, it's not like we're eating cookies and donuts and sugar. Like the carbohydrates that we're eating are very good sources of energy. So for example, I do a lot of sweet potatoes. We both do a lot of rice. Alyssa likes oatmeal to do in the morning. You can do whole grain breads. Fruit is a good carbohydrate source. There's so many good carbohydrate sources that you can use that are not super sugary, and you're not going to get a huge glycemic spike from those carbohydrates. So yes, you want carbs, but you also want good carbs. When we're eating more food, it's not that we're eating more bad food, it's we're eating more good food. If we're eating less food, so we're trying to diet, we're still eating good food, but we're eating less of it. So the quality of the food is always high quality. It's just changing the amounts or the specific macronutrients up or down depending on your goal.
Yeah. Something that I like to do too is if I am working out, let's say I'm working out at 10 a.m. and I wake up at 8 a.m., just as an example, I'm going to focus on getting in a good complex carb source because I have 2 hours to let that digest. Now, if I'm somebody who works out earlier in the morning, then we would want to choose more of a simple carb. So a banana, something that's going to digest quickly and be able to be utilized quickly by the body.
Yep. And I think that's a good segue. Like you said, digestion. Everybody's so different on what their stomach can tolerate. Some people can eat a meal and go work out 20 minutes later. Some people can eat a meal and they need 2 hours, So you need to figure out what specifically works for you. This is what we do. This is our documentation of what we do. Don't think that this is the end all be all as far as like you have to eat this food here and this food there. We don't believe in that. I don't believe in meal plans. I believe in, okay, you have a certain amount of macros that you need to hit. Find healthy foods that you enjoy to structure your day around that. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day. It can be different. It's up to you to figure that out. Figure out what types of food you digest well, because some people, there's very healthy foods that they can't digest well. Some people, their stomach is a garbage can and they can digest whatever. So Alyssa's pointing at me. That is the dichotomy between both of you and I, where Alyssa does have a very sensitive stomach. So she has to find what works for her. Whereas I can eat things in quantities that she can't, not necessarily bad food, but just I can kind of eat a lot of different things and not have the same digestive issues that she has. So we have different digestive systems. So we just need to find what works best for us. I think that's a good segue into talking about how to structure your food around a run or around a workouts. So we can kind of dive into what we do and the types of food that we eat, or the timing between the meal, pre, during, post, and talk about our nutrition around workouts.
Yeah, so like I was saying, though, when we are getting ready to do like a long run, you are going to have a harder time digesting those complex carbs. So it's ideal to give those some time to digest. Otherwise, you are going to end up with like a side ache, some cramping, and
which is not fun.
No, or like you're running and you feel this like swoosh, swoosh in your belly.
Yep.
And typically that's just from food not being properly digested.
If you can avoid scarfing down a big meal right before going on a run, then you're better off just grabbing something that's quick and easy to digest, whether that be a piece of fruit, a complex carb drink source that's going to just get to the body quickly, and you're going to be able to utilize those carbs quicker.
Yeah, I agree. But it all comes back to like figuring out what works for you. Like most people are probably not going to be able to go eat a big heavy meal and go run. Like it's probably not going to go well. Or if you do have a heavy meal, you like to train on a heavy meal, maybe it's 2 hours before you go for a run or a heavy lifting session. So really figure out what works for you. So let's dive into our specific nutrition next. Let's dive into, this is a good segue to talk about the things that we're doing around the workouts, talk about our nutrition within the workouts, post-workouts, and why we structure things the way that we do around our workouts, nutrition.
Yeah, I think we're both really good about being really simple with what and how we eat. We typically eat the same things all the time while switching up vegetables, fruits to get in different micronutrients. But we typically keep the same breakfast because we know that it digests well. You've talked about that before. I've talked about that before. I used to do a lot of oatmeal. That tends to keep me feeling full longer, but it would tend to bloat me. So I've kind of switched over to doing toast and egg whites and some fruit and some Kerrygold butter in the morning. And that just seems to digest quickly for me and keeps me feeling full until the next meal. And I go about 3 hours until that next meal. And then that next meal is going to be a good balance between protein, carbs, and fats, which usually comes from a bar for me. I'm typically busy training, so I just want to get something in quick and right before I jump into a workout. Now, if I'm also doing a run with that workout, I will mix a carb source intro workout to keep me fueling throughout the workout so that I can go longer.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll even like grab some gummy bears. So
yeah,
that's
a good hack. That's a good hack that if anybody knows Jim Stopani, he used to talk about how pixie sticks and gummy bears, intra-workout and post-workout, very fast digested carbohydrate source. And that's a good point where if you're doing longer workouts, typically anything more than an hour, you need to supplement with some form of carbohydrates, whether that's through like a liquid carbohydrate or it's through something like a gummy bear or pixie stick, really easy. Those foods are typically labeled as bad. Yes, if you're just sitting on the couch at 9 o'clock at night or down in pixie sticks, yeah, you're going to get an insulin spike from that. But the whole purpose behind it is to give your body those fast-acting carbohydrates, and it's good to spike the insulin, or it's good to get those carbohydrates fast to the muscle at that time.
Because you're using
because you're using them. So food gets labeled as good and bad a lot. I think that we need to look at, yes, we want to structure 90% of our food around whole food sources, but something like that, it's not like we're like, oh, I want some gummy bears, I'm going to go eat some gummy bears. It's like we're using the gummy bears to keep our performance up. Typically what we'll do when we're running this intra workout will always do some source of carbs, whether that comes from like a liquid carb or a gel. Those are kind of the two that will bounce back and forth. And as far as that, usually you want at least 20 to 25 grams every 30 to 45 minutes, especially if you're going for a longer run. So what we usually do is if we're going anything more than 7 miles, we'll do a gel or energy chews or gummy bears or some sorts of carbohydrates that gives us about 20 to 25 carbs at that full mile part. So that's a good way to, one, get carbohydrates in so you can keep your performance up. And then two, we talked about this in our YouTube video too, to also practice the strategy of digestion. So if you're running and you're not used to digesting food while you're running, it's a good likelihood or good chance that you're going to get a side ache because your body's not used to digesting food when it's running. So you have to start to practice that too as well. So if you have a race coming up, which we do, we're training for the Nebraska Half Marathon on April 28th, all of our longer runs are going to be treated like it's race day because we want to figure out exactly what we need to do digestion-wise, where do we put the carbs, where do we put the electrolytes, how fast do I run. Everything to a T is our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted. We want to make sure that we are practicing that so that on race day we know this is exactly what we have to do. So I think that's super important too. Make sure that if you have a race coming up, practice before race day, intra workout and peri, or your around the workout nutrition, because your digestive system will thank you. And if you have a stitch, you have a side ache when you're running on race day, that's not going to be a fun race and you are not going to PR that race. So practice that. We always practice that. And then anything after that, we'll do one at the 4 mile mark. And then if we're going longer than 7, so say we're doing 10, we're going to do a gel at 4 and a gel at 7. So typically you want one every 3 to 4 miles. It's about that 30-minute mark, depending on how fast you're running. But you want that every 3 mile-ish mark because that's going to help keep your energy up so that you can keep performing your best when you're running.
Yeah, something that helps me is, we were talking about this today actually, when I'm running and having a gel, it's like slowly, like I don't take that gel and I don't just like send it.
Yeah.
It's got to be like a little bit at a time. Otherwise, I think that cramp does come on quickly if you just like full send, squeeze all that out of them.
Yeah.
There is also sugar in that too. So it's just like a big insulin spike too that, you know, like your body's kind of like, whoa.
I also take about 3 hits.
Yeah.
But some people can just send it right down. You know, again, you just have to practice what works for you. Some people, they want to get it over with. They want to squeeze the pouch right down, swallow it, and throw it in the trash can and dump it.
Yeah.
I typically don't like to do that. I like to break it up about 3 gulps.
Yeah.
Because I don't want any digestive issue. I don't want that coming back up. I don't want to run into that. So I like to play it a little more safe. But again, you got to figure out what works for you. If you like to just send it, go for it. Send it, and more power to you. So
yeah, and then another thing on race day. Now, this is something we can't really practice, and this has nothing to do with carbs, but it's fueling the body. So when you're running and you have those like water stops, sometimes there's Gatorade there too. I would not skimp on stopping.
Yeah.
I know sometimes like when I'm running and I'm trying to drink it, because I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep running and drink it.
Yeah.
And it'll go everywhere, but whatever I can get in there, at least I'm getting something.
And you're practicing that.
But yeah, well, it's not really something you practice unless you carry like a handheld water bottle, which we do that as the runs get longer, especially in the heat. I know our last half marathon, we had some pretty hot days because we don't always get a run early in the morning. We sometimes can't run until later in the afternoon when it's like the hottest time of the day. And we definitely would be bringing those electrolytes and that handheld water bottle. And that was a good way to practice. But the cups that they give you are not like a good squeezy cup, a good squeezy water bottle like what we're using.
A styrofoam cup. Yeah.
Yeah, that like sometimes you can like fold them a little bit so they're like pointed and then send it back. But I would not skimp on getting in some of that water because that also is going to help you keep going. And that's definitely something that I've learned. And then also with carbs, this is something I want to touch on too, is that when we think of carbs, I'm always telling my clients, always pair a protein with your carbs. Now, we're going to kind of contradict that when we're doing weight training and cardio, because like you talked about, carbs are going to spike up your insulin, and we actually want that to happen during our training sessions. Whereas we don't want those things to happen when you're at home sitting on the couch and you're just munching on bread, or I don't know why that's
Can't quite that visual in my head. Munching on bread.
I don't know why that was the first thing that came over my head.
Love it.
But any type of just plain carb source, we don't want that to just spike up. So when I tell you to properly balance out your meals, that goes throughout the day. But then we're going to contradict that when we're working out, making sure that we're adding in just good quality carbs that are actually going to spike up your insulin.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of talked about intra workout. Let's rewind here real quick. We got ahead of ourselves. Let's go talk about pre-workout nutrition. So typically what I'll do before, so say it's just a run. So we're talking about running nutrition today, but the same thing can kind of be applied to my strength training sessions. If I'm going to run, about 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours before that run, I'm going to have a meal that's going to be fairly heavy. So typically what I'll do, some of my favorite pre-run, pre-workout meals are going to be a couple pieces of toast, some peanut butter, honey, and a protein bar, protein shake. I also can get away with doing like a meal where I would say maybe I'm eating some sort of protein source like chicken, beef, tuna, 4 to 6 ounces, and then have a carb source like rice or a sweet potato. Usually I'll have to push that out a little bit. Like, okay, I'm going to run in 2 hours. I'm going to hit this meal. But having that is super important, whether it's a lifting or a running session. And then if I'm going to run, especially if it's going to be a longer distance run, I will, about 30 minutes out, I'll mix up some electrolytes and some liquid carbs, usually about 20 to, depending on the run, 20 to 40 grams, depending on how long it's going to be, and drink that before a workout. So usually about half hour before that. And that's just a good way to make sure, again, that you're stocked up on carbohydrates, because that is what your body's going to use when you're running, is it's going to use the carbohydrates stored within the muscle. So we had about 2 hours out, had a meal, and then had those liquid carbs before the run. Now, if I'm strength training, I won't have the liquid carbs for a strength train, but if it goes anything more than 60 minutes, that's what we talked about. That's where I'll personally add 20 to 40 grams of carbohydrates to keep up that intensity, especially if it's a lift and a run day, where it's like, okay, we're going to lift for an hour, and we also have a 45-minute run. There definitely needs to be some intra-workouts, carbohydrates, and potentially even electrolytes too as well, depending on how much you're sweating and how much you're really pushing your body. So that's what I personally do pre-workouts. I know Alyssa kind of talked about what she does pre-workout. We kind of are a little bit different, where I like to have a little bit heavier of a meal before workouts. But again, that just goes back to my point of just find what works for you, because everybody's so different. Whether you like more food, less food, you like to have this or that, just find what works for you. And that's the best way to figure out what your fueling strategy is.
Yeah, I know something that always makes me laugh is when we're working out, and so like you said, I don't really like front load my meals because it's hard for me to digest my food as well as you do. But I do tend to get hungry like in the middle of my workout. So that's why those gummy bears and those intra carbs are really helpful for me, especially. I know when I was in, this has nothing to do with running, but I was in like bikini prep, I would actually have to drink a protein shake in between my, lifting session if it went over.
Terrible.
Yeah, if it's over an hour, because I was hungry. Yeah. And I feel like dizzy and weak when I start to get hungry. So including those quick carb sources into my intra workout, it just like instantly gave me life back. Yeah.
We are different in that aspect. Like you get actually hungry during
angry.
I wasn't even saying it. You do get like hungry during a lift or a run. I don't necessarily get hungry. I just know that it's going to help me by using some intra-workout carbohydrates or intra-workout electrolytes. I always know that, okay, drink this. I'm not necessarily like reaching for it because I know I need it, but I know I need it. Like I know it's going to help me. So we got to figure out what works for you. And, at the end of the day, if it works for you, that's great. That's, that's the ultimate goal, is we all want to find out our perfect fueling, nutrition, a workout plan, and just hone in on that. And then once you find it, just lock in on that and then just be consistent with it. And you repeat it. And that's where you just start to see all this awesome progress.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about pre-workout fueling options. And then we talked a lot about our intra workout fueling sources. Now let's talk about our post-workout.
Yeah, I think that, again, the peri-workout nutrition, so pre, intra, post, that's where a lot of focus is going to be. The nutrition throughout the day is also very important, but that's where if you can really focus on specific things, it's really going to help, one, fuel your workouts. So your pre and your intra are going to help fuel those workouts. They're going to help you perform and keep your performance up so you can make good progress. But that post-workout nutrition is super important for the recovery aspect. So as soon as that workout's done, that recovery starts to where typically you are breaking down muscle tissue, whether it's through a run or a strength training session. That 24 to 72 hours after is where we need to recover. We don't want soreness lasting more than 3 days. And if it is, it's probably not a workout issue. It's probably more of an under recovery issue. So that's where that post-workout nutrition is super important. So you always want to make sure that you're getting in some good source of protein, and then you're also getting in some good source of carbohydrates. Typically, you want to keep this either shake or meal pretty low fat, because what fat's going to do is it's going to slow the digestion down of the food. So typically you want to have some source of protein, whether that's coming from a whole protein source like a meat, or if you're vegetarian, some sort of vegetarian protein. Or a really easy way to get some protein after workout is through a protein powder or a protein shake. If you're needing some extra carbohydrates, you can make a shake with some fruit. You could even throw some more liquid carbohydrates like a dextrose powder or something into that shake, because that is the most optimal time pre, intra, post to get protein, carbohydrates so that you can kickstart that recovery. Because when you're working out, you're breaking down that muscle glycogen. So if you have a really hard workout, and I don't know if you've ever weighed yourself before a workout, weighed yourself after workout. It's like, oh, I lost weight after the workout. That weight is coming from water, from the sweat. It's also coming from the water and glycogen within the muscle that you're breaking down. So when you break down that muscle glycogen, you need to replenish that. And that post-workout is really the best way to shuttle carbs into the muscle, and is a great time to get a source of carbohydrates in. So usually you're going to want to shake. You might even want some electrolytes. We can talk about that too. And typically wants a whole meal too as well within an hour and a half of that post-workout meal.
Yeah, so like you said, you could either do a shake or a meal. And I feel like I always tell people to choose whole foods if you can, and shakes are a great way to supplement when we're in a pinch. But I love shakes post-workout because they're going to get to the muscles quicker, opposed to chicken or any type of meat specifically.
Yep.
So that's always like a better option in my opinion, is to drink a shake. And like you said, you could throw some fruit in it, pair that with some carbs, and it's just going to be a quicker way to get to the muscles and recover quicker.
Yeah. I think sometimes what we'll typically do is we'll have a shake and a meal. It's post-workout. So typically you want like a 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein post-workout. So if you're having 25 grams of protein, you want 50 grams of carbohydrates, especially if you're working out intensely. And if you're really trying to perform and you want to re-upload those carbohydrates back into the muscle. So that could come from fruits. That could come from a shake. So like a good example would be maybe you take a scoop of protein powder, you mix either some water or like a low-fat milk. You could mix in a banana. You could put in some honey. You could throw some simple carbohydrates that are going to digest really quickly. No shake, you could blend that up, or you could make that before you're going to the gym and you just have it already made. And that's something you drink after. And then maybe like an hour later, then you have a meal to where you're having a full good source of protein through a meat, or if you're a vegetarian, a non-meat option, have a good source of carbohydrates, something like whole pasta, potatoes, rice. Those things are going to be very good sources of carbohydrates. And then you could throw and a good source of veggies too. But again, at that post-workout meal, I'd keep the fat pretty low. So especially with your protein options, this isn't where you want like a really fatty cut steak, or this isn't where you want a bunch of olive oil put on whatever you're eating. You want to make sure that you're keeping it pretty lean source of protein, and that's just going to help you kickstart that recovery so much better, and you will feel the difference if you do this. You can try it out. I wouldn't advise it, but if you want to really test it out and be like, I'm going to see if Jordan and Alyssa know what they're talking about, try a workout, really hard workout, and just drink water after it, and then maybe wait a couple hours, see how you feel. The next time, try a hard workout, have a shake, have some electrolytes, make sure they're hydrating, and then like an hour later, go have a full meal. You're going to feel so much better. Like your muscles aren't going to feel heavy. You're just going to not be foggy. You literally feel the difference of what it does for you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. After our half marathon, we ran to grab donuts. And it was just like, for a moment, we're like, yes, we ran a half marathon, so we want to eat donuts now. I'm pretty sure that was the worst decision ever. I know, awful. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well,
so sick.
It was quite the ordeal too, because we forgot a key or something.
I forgot a key.
Honestly, I couldn't remember who forgot a key. I just remember I forgot a key
to get
and like we had to drive all the way out to your parents' house or something, which is like 35 minutes away. Drive back. Meanwhile, all we had post half marathon was electrolytes. We didn't have any carbs, so it was because we didn't have the donuts yet. So we drove all the way out to your. Yeah, it was. So our post half marathon nutrition was trash.
So I wanted to point that out because I'm not going to make that mistake again. And just because you're finishing a race like that doesn't mean to go throw it all away and with donuts. I'm not saying you can't have those days.
Yeah, but donut if you want. Yeah. Enjoy your hard work, but
I think
don't
save that for later, honestly. I think afterwards I would get in like a good proper recovery.
Yes.
And then rest. And then if we decided to go celebrate later, then I think that's a better option.
Yeah, so you're going to feel better if you have, I'm going to have a good protein shake. I'm going to have my 2-to-1 at least ratio of my 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. And I'm going to get some electrolytes. I'm going to hydrate. And then maybe like, I like donuts or I like cookies. I'm going to go have a cookie. I'm going to have a donut, celebrate, or I'm going to have it at dinner. Yeah. If you're not a sweets person, I think that's definitely a better strategy. I think that's what we planned on. It just didn't quite go the way we planned it.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to point that out because I think that we learned our lesson there too. But yeah, I think the plan was to be a little different.
And I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt
sick.
The half marathon afterwards. I mean, you're supposed to not feel great, but yeah, it's especially on the day of an event like that, like 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, Tough Mudder, whatever you're doing. To make sure that you're practicing the same things that you practice throughout your training. Yes, and you have to be consistent with it, and it will literally make a difference. I can promise you. I felt terrible after a half marathon. I felt great because
in the run
had a great time, and it was a good experience. But the post-workout nutrition was subpar at best, and I definitely felt that.
Yeah.
So it will make a huge difference. Just save yourself a headache and save yourself pain and agony, and just take care of your peri-workout nutrition and make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. And not just with your training, but also with your nutrition, because they do go hand in hand. You could train, you can do the best workout in the world, the best program, but if you're not supporting your program with the proper nutrition, you're not going to be able to have longevity, because eventually you're going to be under recovering. There's going to be an injury that happens, and then you're just kind of back to the drawing board. So nutrition, workouts, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. And then we touched a little bit on fats. So obviously donuts have fats, and we're not saying to totally don't incorporate those fats in your diet. We've only really touched on proteins and carbs.
Yeah.
So I do want to touch a little bit on fats because I don't want them to be forgotten.
Yes.
Fats are important for overall hormonal
balance.
Yeah. And just health in general. So we typically take about 3 hours for those fats to digest, which is why we don't want to implement them pre and post workout or during. That would just not be a good idea. So saving the fats for later on in the day, maybe when you're not working out. So if you're a morning workout person, you maybe lower the fats in the morning and then save the fats for later in the evening, like you talked about, the steak dinner or something like that later on in the day.
Yeah.
So we're not saying don't eat these foods, don't eat fats. I eat avocados all the time.
Yeah.
I eat nut butters all the time. I eat Kerrygold's butter all the time. Like, those are my favorite fat sources. And I actually like super lean meat. And so I like to get my fats from other foods.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure people knew that, yeah, we are focusing on our carbs and our proteins during and post and intra workout, but don't forget to introduce those carbs later on in the day or throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, fat is not bad. Like, I don't want you to think that fat is bad. The reason why fat is only 20% of our diet is because the carbohydrates are adjusted up higher than they normally would be. Typically, you would do like a 40-30-30 split.
Yeah.
For people just kind of on their macros. Yeah. But because we have the specific goal and because our total volume of workouts or lifting and or running is high,
Yeah.
we need more carbohydrates. So you can't adjust one thing up without adjusting the other thing down. We're not going to adjust protein down because we need to make sure that stays high so we can recover, maintain muscle mass. And we're still trying to build muscle mass too.
Yeah.
We're challenging the concept that you can lift and you can run. You can train for a half marathon or a marathon and still build strength, build muscle, or bare minimum, maintain. Exactly. So if you adjust the carbs up, you have to adjust the fat down. Typically, the protein usually stays pretty consistent, or vice versa. If your fat is going up, your carbs are probably going to come back down. So that's the whole reason why we talk about, like, around the workout, keep your fat moderate. It doesn't have to be 0 grams of fat, but just make sure you're not adding an entire avocado pre-workout or post-workout, or you're not adding. Yeah, you can do a little bit. Fat is not bad. It's just when you have excess, because it's going to slow the absorption of those nutrients down. That's the main reason. It's not because fat is bad. It's just because it's going to slow the digestion rate down. So you still need fat. If you're an evening workout person, like Alyssa mentioned, move your fat up to the beginning of the day. If you're a morning workout person, move your fat towards the evening and just kind of adjust. It all just comes back to making sure that you're hitting your percentages. So you're going to have 50% of your food coming from carbs. You're going to have 30% come from protein and 20% from fat. As long as you have that ratio and a good ratio and you have that down pat, that's what's really going to matter. And say that you get out of like a training for a specific race, you can adjust those up or down. And some people like more carbohydrates in their diet naturally. Some people like less, some people like higher fat, some people like lower fat. So yeah, just finding what works for you. But if you're training for a race or an event, this is typically going to be the percentage that you want to stick with and play around with, because it's going to set you up for success.
Yeah, we talked the other day too. I want to bring this up because I'll just call myself out. I typically like to be in that lower calorie deficit, and you were coming at me guns hot. And you're like, you need to bump up your calories. And I know these things, but I'm a girl, I can have those fearful moments too, just like anyone else.
Yeah.
So I want to mention too, like we talked about, it's just not a good time to put your body in a calorie deficit because you're already putting your body at stress.
Yep.
When we work out in general, we are putting our bodies at stress. So anytime that we add more stress, we are just going to have a harder time to recover. So if we can eliminate any extra added stress by properly fueling the body and staying at least maintenance, and like you reminded me and mentioned to me, if I'm even at maintenance and I'm burning more calories, calories in versus calories out, you're probably going to lose a little bit of weight.
Technically in a deficit at that point. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it is calories in, calories out. But if you're in a deficit and you're working out 20 times harder, you're putting more stress on your body, what's going to happen is your body's actually just going to hold on to all that weight. And it's going to be stressed and it's not going to recover. So I know these things. I just have to be reminded, hey, it's okay to eat more. and your body needs that fuel to be able to recover.
Yeah, it's easy for me to say because it's not you, like, and vice versa. But it is important it all just ties back to a goal. Okay, our goal right now is to PR our next half marathon on April 28th. So our focus is that takes the priority. And in order to do so and train hard and make progress and recover, we need to be bare minimum eating at our maintenance amount of calories. I'm just coming off of a bulk where prior to this, like for 8 months, so 6 months, my goal was to gain weight, build strength. And throughout that process, add a little bit of body fat on. That's kind of just part of the process. And I know that by running more, I'm going to lose a little weight, which is fine. Actually, I'm fine with that. Not too much weight, because it'll help just my running just to be a little bit lighter. So I'm 205 right now. Even if I can lose 5 to 10 pounds by race day, I'm going to feel better running at that weight. But I know because my mileage is going to increase, I'm still eating plenty of calories, but more than likely I'm going to lose some body fat process.
Yeah.
So I think I get it, because I have extreme body dysmorphia, and I've struggled with that for years. And it's really hard to like let go and say like, you need to eat more food. It's a very scary thing for a lot of people, but you have to focus on what is your personal goal. You have to focus on what are the necessary steps that I need to take to reach that goal. And if you're under eating, you're not going to be able to reach whatever fitness goal you're looking to achieve. I don't care what it is. If you are not fueling your body properly, your body's not going to thank you. It's not going to be willing to make those changes. Like Alyssa mentioned, so many people are actually under eating, and that's why they're gaining weight. So that's why they're overweight. If they just eat enough, it's stress on the body. So if you just eat enough food to fuel for good workouts, for good energy throughout the day, for good mental clarity, good hormone levels, your body's going to thank you for doing so. So just if you are struggling right now, I really encourage you to think about what your personal goals are. And if you need help, you can reach out to us or reach out to a coach, because we're all here to help. We're all here to guide you, to help you make the best decisions that you can to reach your own personal goals. And sometimes you do need someone to say, hey, like, we're not doing the right things right now. And it's a tough thing to hear, but if you're open and willing to hear it, I think and make those adjustments, I think it really does have a lot of value in anyone's program, no matter what their goal is.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit of having each other too, is you're like, hey, how much are you eating right now? And I'm like, eat. And I know that. So
you have a very high metabolism too.
Yeah. And so I naturally, to maintain, am at that like 2,000 range. But when you add in running, and I mean, our workouts some days are like 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We just went for a 7-mile run today. Say on average, this is a very average, say you burn at least 100 calories a mile. That's 700 calories right there. So say that your what's your BMR?
I think it's like 14.
14, okay. So say that you're 14, you had 700, and that's just your BMR. That's not calculating anything. That's already 2,100 right there.
Yeah.
So you at least probably need 24 to 25.
You're kind of very fit to be, and I move around.
Alyssa gets all sorts of fidgets in.
Yeah, and that adds in burning calories and chasing around a 2-year-old.
Yeah. So you just don't focus on, I think what happens is like the media tells us a lot of different things, and it's like you hear this, you hear that. Yeah. So just focus on your goals and make sure that you're getting your information from credible sources. And you have to test it out. Test out what works for you. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. You have to make the changes that you need in order to see the changes that you want to see. So you have to be uncomfortable. You have to, and not uncomfortable is bad, but just like you have to be doing just a little bit more in any aspect with your workouts, with your nutrition, with your recovery. You have to be doing just a little bit more, or changing things up just slightly to create stimulus for growth and getting better.
Yeah, for sure. And when we're making sure that we're getting in proper nutrition throughout the day, when I say eating more, I'm not talking like stop at McDonald's, Taco Bell just to get in more calories. It's like we're adding in more of sweet potatoes, more rice, more chicken, good, healthy food. I just want to throw that out there. Because that can be mistaken. Like, oh, I can eat more, so I can eat this whole pizza.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and it can fit into your macros. And there's been like tests out there and studies out there of people who have done that. But you're going to feel like shit.
Yeah.
And I would rather fuel my body with good food and get through that run and not feel like shit, opposed to eating something that makes me feel good for 10 minutes.
Yeah. 90% of the time, structure your food around whole food sources. We go out to dinner once a week and have food that maybe isn't deemed healthy. So like we'll have pizza, or we have sweet tooth. So we'll go, there's a cookie place. We love cookies, and we'll have a cookie. So most of the time, structure your food around whole food sources. If you want to indulge the other 10%, there's nothing wrong with that. But just don't make the mistake of flip-flopping those, where you're only eating good food like 10% of the time, and the rest of it is just shit, and you're trying to burn more calories in your workout to out-train your bad diet. It does not work. You cannot do it. You have to support your fitness and your fitness goals with proper nutrition. So that's a good one.
It's a good video. We need to make that video.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Yes, that would be a great video. Eat like 10,000 calories and try and burn 10,000 the next day. I've seen other people do it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, doesn't work.
No.
No. So
Be up all night
yeah,
and still not do it.
just running everywhere.
Yeah.
So this is everything that we're doing with our nutrition for preparation for a half marathon. I hope this video helped you guys. Like I said, this is our way of documenting what we're doing. Everybody has different things that work for them, and you need to craft that and figure that out over time. But as a general rule of thumb, these are the things that we're doing that you can structure your nutrition and really just see better results and better performance if you focus in and hone in on improving your nutrition and being consistent with that. Not just one day, not just 2 days, but continuing proper nutrition over the course of your lifetime so that you can improve your performance, body composition, all that stuff, but also just improve your overall health and just have longevity.
Yeah, it's all about creating the perfect formula so that it can fit into your lifestyle. And it's something that you are going to continue to do because that's the number one issue for people.
Exactly.
Finding something that works for them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we will be back next week.
That's right. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.